On today's episode, how the Geelong and Sydney draw reshapes the finals race. We take a look at some trade targets for Adelaide and Brisbane, and we answer some of your questions. All that and more on today's episode of Zero Hanger TV. All right, so straight into it. Let's take a look at the ladder, and a draw between Geelong and Sydney. It's going to reshape that finals race.
Yeah, it was already so close in the kind of 5th all the way down to 14th or so. And yeah, the result that gives both sides 2 points each kind of just sees things shift a little bit, but not too much. I guess where those two clubs sit, Richmond and Carlton are the other two clubs that have draws, and that really makes them a bit more susceptible in a way to how good their chances are for making a final spot. They probably would have liked to see one of those sides lose, one of the sides win, and it kind of gives them a clear indication. But now, both of their percentages kind of come into play a bit more than what we were initially expecting before the draw. So Richmond's percentage really low, and that's going to make it really hard for them if they do end up level on points like they currently are with Carlton and Sydney. Geelong's is a lot stronger, as is Sydney's when you compare that to Carlton, and Carlton are 8% ahead of Richmond. So the Tigers now face that losing battle even more so as a result of the draw on Friday night.
Yep. And this is a question that came from Tyler Irwin through our Instagram page. So was the draw a good result for either Geelong or Sydney?
On the night, I'd say it's probably a good one for Geelong, just given the amount of chances Sydney had and how they failed to capitalise and weren't all too clinical. At the same time, you say that before the bounce, Sydney would have been maybe happy with the draw coming up against Geelong. So I guess from the night, there's probably a bit of sway both ways. I'd say maybe for Sydney, if you're going to pick either, as kind of being happy enough with that result and how things are shaping up. They're just needing to add a few points here and there as the season goes on, and two's better than none. So they'll certainly take that.
Yeah, always good to take some points. All right, so it's heating up towards the final end of the season. So taking a look at some trade targets now. So Adelaide and Brisbane, we'll start with Adelaide. What are they going to be looking for?
Yeah, so first club in our trade target series and starting alphabetically, why not? I think as they've kind of flagged throughout the year, it'll be local talent that they can bring to South Australia and still available talent. Even though I think last year there was a heap of contracted players that moved clubs, whether they were contracted for this year or even a few after. We're mostly looking at off-contract players, and it's an easy one to start off the list. We'll name a couple, and the full web article is on our site, but a couple obvious ones. Mason Redmond for Adelaide, a free agent that they I think will be trying pretty hard to get in and lock down. Now Tom Doedee is on their books. He's another free agent. He could be heading the other way, so that's a great filler for them. And Redmond's been an absolute spark for the Bombers. His teammate, Brendan Zerk-Thatcher, another SA boy, he's one that we've named in that list as well. And then one I think maybe keep an eye on. It's quite an interesting position for Josh Carmichael at Collingwood. Can't get a game, doing some stellar work in the VFL. From SA, made the move last year to Collingwood through the mid-season draft. So I think he'd be a great little play on that forward flank, can play through midfield, can play even deep in attack. And yeah, he'd be a nice little, I think, cheap pickup for Adelaide, who can kind of just refine their midfield group a little bit.
Yep. And Brisbane, so their list is looking pretty good, but what would they be looking for towards the end of the season?
Well, yeah, I don't think they're necessarily going to be adding little pieces. That it does seem like they could be in the market for some pretty big names, and that's probably going to be the case given that they don't have a first-round pick this year, so they don't really want to be having to give up all too much outside of that already. So free agents might just be the way that they go, and if you look at the top free agents and you look at what Brisbane need, then a key defender or a tall defender, whether it's first, second or third tall, would be on their list. Harry Himmelberg might be a good one. We mentioned just before, Tom Doedee. It's more of that third intercept option. So those are two guys that we had on our list. Didn't have Ben Mackay. Not sure just how well they would be able to lure him up that way, but key defenders, and it was Himmelberg and Doedee among a few others that made our list, which you can have a look through on zerohanger.com.
Good stuff. All right, so moving over to our rookie rankings, and the top two still holding strong, but a little bit of movement again.
Yeah, so second week of having a top 8, and we've seen half the list change spots. But as you mentioned, Will Ashcroft staying at 1, Harry Sheasel staying at 2, and they both had really good weekends in round 16. It just seems like the second one of them will slip, the other one will take that spot in top, as we kind of saw the last couple of weeks when more so when Sheasel had a bye. But they're both just so strong, as we've seen all season, just so consistent. So they'll stay at 1 and 2, Ashcroft and Shearsel respectively. Max Michael only comes into the top 3. I think it's more maybe off Bailey Humphrey's last couple of weeks, just probably a bit under from what we've come to expect from him so far, and it was already quite close between those two. And Michael Andy's been fantastic, and went head-to-head with Cam Zohar, kept him to a goal on the weekend. So he comes back into the top 3. And then, 4 through 8, so Ruben Jimby, kind of just outside of that top 4 bracket after Humphrey. And then on top of those, George Wardlaw bumps up a spot ahead of Seamus Mitchell. Wardlaw had the bye the week before, so that's probably what made him come back a bit. And then I thought a nice performance against Adelaide was good enough to have him come back up. Seamus Mitchell still quite good for the Hawks out of defence. And then Matt Johnson just keeps that spot at 8th overall. Mm-hmm.
I think Wardlaw's one to watch for me. He's quite exciting. And honourable mentions?
Yeah, we had him last week, and he was pretty superb for the Eagles again. I thought Elijah Hewitt had a nice little impact in the front half of the field, a couple of goals. He's one that's kind of pressing his case for a top 8 spot, as are Jasper Fletcher and Josh Weddle. So 2 other honourable mentions. So a lot of pressure right outside that top 8 where Matt Johnson's just sitting inside of.
Beautiful. All right, so moving over to some more questions from our audience. If you want to send some questions in, make sure to follow us on Instagram or Facebook. So this one comes from Reese Painting. Thank you for the question. So if Carlton go to Freo and win, are they back in the hunt?
Well, it's a performance we'd like to see from them. Like 2 10-goal wins in their last 2's, the form that they want to have. But when you're kind of looking at the oppositions they came up against, Hawthorn, not all too flash, and Gold Coast the week prior, it was a really, really poor performance from them. And those two wins kind of came after that block where there was a lot of concern for Carlton. We're seeing better game style. I think a lot better ball movement, particularly in that forward half of the field. Against Hawthorn in particular was really good. But yeah, if it's against Freo, if they're knocking Freo over, and Freo, it's a pretty big scalp. But Freo aren't the same side that Carlton went over and did similar against last year. So Freo would be a big one, a great start and another step towards the right direction, but it's probably not the answer just yet, and we want to be seeing a bit more of them in a couple of weeks after, I'd say. Yeah,
still more to see there. And this one from Tyler Irwin again. So Coleman-Jones, there was a late bump on Nick Murray. So how many weeks, or if any at all?
Yeah, none. MROs, nothing, no charge whatsoever, not even a fine. Which I thought, maybe a bit of a surprise. Arrived pretty late to that marking contest. I don't think he got Murray high, but even if it was body contact with low impact and just careless conduct, it wasn't intentional. Given it was in a marking contest, then he would have come away with a pretty small fine. No charge at all was I think a bit of a surprise. On the flip side though, Josh Worrell, who remonstrated pretty quickly, he was the one that actually copped a $1,000 fine for engaging in a melee. So actually Adelaide were on the rough end of that one in a way. So but nothing for Callum Coleman-Jones to have a case to answer for.
Pretty unlucky there with that one. All right, so to finish off, as always, we've got our Zero Hanger MVP and another new leader this week.
Yeah, Bont is back on top. So we've had a fair few lead changes, I guess, across the last couple of weeks now, and his 18-vote performance against Fremantle sees him shoot up back into top spot. And Tim Durante, who was first, has actually now dropped to 3rd. He was the only player in our top 11 that didn't poll a vote over the weekend. Nick Dacos, one of only 2 players in round 16 that had a perfect 20-vote game. So he's right on Bont's tail thanks to that performance. Hugh McCluggage being the other one for his efforts on Thursday night against Richmond. And then just a few others. Zach Merritt now into the top 10. Lachie Neale, a big riser across the last few weeks, and as mentioned, just about everyone else in that top 11 polled votes. So it's pretty contested and tight, right in the top end of our leaderboard at the moment.
Yep, awesome. All right, so that wraps it up for Zero Hangout this week. Thanks, Mitch.
Thanks, Phoenix.
Don't forget, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also catch us on our socials if you want to send in some questions, and you can always catch the latest AFL news at zerohanger.com.